Okay, let's raise the big question once again tonight. Is Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu in particular driving this war now and Donald Trump simply tagging along? Is Donald Trump constantly changing the goalposts with no clear endgame in mind? Is war a weapon of mass distraction for Donald Trump from his domestic troubles? And joining me now from Washington, D.C. is a special guest joined by Mehdi Hasan, editor-in-chief and CEO of Zeteo News, one of the world's leading opinion makers, sharp opinions as always. Mehdi, appreciate you joining us. You're joining us on a day when we are hearing news of unprecedented attacks once again on Tehran, possibility of a building where the assembly to elect a successor to Ali Khamenei were meeting. How do you see this? Israel and the United States now relentless in their attacks. Do you really believe Iran can hold out?
It is a big question of our time. We are in a very, very dangerous moment for the world, for the region. We're all affected by this, a massive escalation in the Middle East, a completely unnecessary, unprovoked war, a war of aggression against Iran, whatever your views of Iran. And people can be very critical, as I am, of Iran's government, of its human rights record, whatever you want to be critical of, its nuclear program. This was a war of aggression, a war of choice launched by the United States and Israel. They've all but admitted it. Their rationales keep shifting by the day as to why they're bombing Iran. We're talking, Rajdeep, on a day where Donald Trump says, well, it's too late to talk, even though on Sunday he said he wanted to talk. So they're all over the place. As you say, we're escalating. More and more targets are getting hit. They've already killed the head of state, the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, on day one, completely illegal under international law. And they've got no strategy to end this. They've got no end goal in sight. They've not explained to the American public or the wider international community as to why they are doing it and when they plan to stop. And we're seeing it escalate around the region. Americans are being asked to leave the Middle East. People are being killed in Gulf countries. Lebanon now is facing an Israeli ground invasion as we speak. 50 people killed in Lebanon, 750 people killed in Iran, people killed in Israel. The whole thing is a disaster.
You're saying it's a disaster, but when I speak to Israeli guests or indeed American guests close to the establishment, they say this is a just war. That's the word that's being used, a just war to stop Iran from exporting terror or becoming a nuclear country that can destabilize the region and the world.
So some of us who studied philosophy and theology in university will remember the criteria for a just war is that it has to be a last resort, has to be an act of self-defense, all other options have to be exhausted. That clearly wasn't the case. Raj, you don't have to take my word for it. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, stood in Congress yesterday, spoke to reporters and said the imminent threat, this is the legal justification for their attack, the imminent threat was not against the US, as many of us pointed out it wasn't. He said that Israel was planning to attack Iran, and because America knew Israel was planning to attack Iran, America had to attack first, because once Israel attacked Iran, Iran would attack America. Think about the illogicality of that position. Rather than just stop Israel from illegally attacking Iran, America decided we will attack first and say it's an imminent threat on us. As even senior Democratic Party lawmakers are saying now, Rajat, even pro-Israel Democrats are openly saying an imminent threat to Israel is not a threat against the United States. Our country is not the same as Israel. Israel's interests are not America's interests. And I think that's becoming a very fascinating political debate here in the US, the shifting terrain on America's relationship with Israel. Of course, Israeli politicians are going to tell you that this is good for them. They've been wanting to take out Iran for decades. Benjamin Netanyahu admitted just yesterday, I've been yearning, he said, dreaming of doing this for 40 years. Donald Trump is the first president to agree. Don't forget, Bill Clinton, George Bush, Joe Biden, multiple American presidents, Barack Obama, said no when Netanyahu told them to bomb Iran. When George W. Bush and Dick Cheney thought Iran was a step too far, think about how extreme this step is that Donald Trump has taken in his second term for Netanyahu's sake, and I would argue as a distraction from his domestic economic woes and the release of the Epstein files.
Now, you're making an important point. You're claiming that Donald Trump, at least partly, has been driven by the fact to make this a weapon of mass distraction, if I may use that word, from the economic crisis, the Epstein files, and that it is Netanyahu who's leading the aggression, and Donald Trump has chosen to play ball in a way previous American presidents have not. What really has changed? Is it just simply the way Donald Trump is in comparison to his predecessors? Here is a president who has simply no time for the international rules-based order. That's why he's chosen to go along.
Oh, 100%. He has no interest. Other presidents have also, let's just be clear, Archdeep, other American presidents have also violated international law and the rules-based order. But at least they've pretended that they care about it. They've paid some lip service to it. And as I mentioned, even some of our most hawkish American presidents, George W. Bush, did not bomb Iran. Donald Trump is someone who doesn't care about international law. He doesn't care about national sovereignty. He's a very imperialist-style president. You know, we're taking America back 50, 100, 150 years. We saw what he did in Venezuela at the start of the year. He illegally went in and abducted the sitting president from his bed with his wife and declared himself, Trump declared himself, acting president of Venezuela. He says he now controls and rules Venezuela. He says he wants to take Greenland away from the Europeans, away from Denmark, completely in violation of international law, the UN and NATO. And of course, so Iran is something, it was very easy for Netanyahu to get Donald Trump to do this. And look, this is not just me saying this. The New York Times has a big piece on how Trump went to war, big deep dive, and their opening paragraph, Rajat, the opening paragraph begins with Benjamin Netanyahu walked into the Oval Office in February to make sure that Donald Trump stays on a path to war. Netanyahu went on Fox last night on Sean Hannity's show and just laughed maniacally when Hannity said, people say that you made Trump do this. It is very clear that this is a war for Israel. What American national interest is there? 6 American service members have been killed. Who's going to tell their families they died for nothing? Gas and oil prices are going up in a country where affordability and price rises, inflation has already been a huge political controversy. And of course, all of our allies, the Gulf allies, are saying that the US is not a protector of the Gulf. If you're in the UAE and Qatar and Bahrain, you used to look at the US for protection. They were your shield. Now you're getting bombed by Iran and the Americans can't protect you?
No, but if this all results eventually in the regime change that Donald Trump seems to suggest or seems to hope it will, then Donald Trump could well claim victory. I've been trying to understand whether there is an end game. I've been asking a number of guests. No one has clarity on that. Do you see an end game if Donald Trump is able to put in place in Iran someone who he believes will toe the line of the American-Israel axis? Is that the end game?
So a few things there. Number one, my colleague Swin Subsang here at Zeteo has been reporting from his sources inside the administration that they went into this war with no end game at all. They're trying to work it out in retrospect. After dropping the bombs, they're now trying to work out what is the end strategy, what is the exit strategy, which is a bizarre way to go to war, of course. And this is an administration that is full of incompetent people. Let's just be very clear. In fact, Trump himself admitted, Rajdeep, I don't know if you saw, he said, we did have a plan to replace Khamenei. We had a number 2 and number 3 we had picked. But they got killed as well in the initial bombing. Imagine they killed the people they had wanted to replace Khamenei. That's the kind of incompetence with which they're bombing Iran. Number 2, you say regime change could be the end goal. Well, as I said at the start of the interview, the end goal keeps changing. On the one hand, Donald Trump says regime change. Then he says, no, it's not about the regime. They can stay as long as they get rid of the nuclear program. Then they say, well, it's not about nuclear program. It's about freeing the Iranian people. Then they say, well, actually, it's about the ballistic missiles. They're all over the place when it comes to their actual goal. Everyone can see that. Finally, I would say, we don't know what regime change looks like in Iran. The American record on a regime change is a disaster. Should we talk about Iraq? Should we talk about Afghanistan, where the Taliban are back in charge? Should we talk about Libya, which is a failed state today? Syria, Venezuela, he just took out the president but kept in the rest of the government, didn't bring in the quote-unquote democratic opposition. My worry for Iran is that you don't just lose this government and then have some happy democracy or even the return of the Shah's son. You actually get a civil war in Iran. You actually get a failed state in Iran, which is, by the way, Rajid, what the Israelis want. The Israelis don't want a strong Iran. They don't want a strong Iraq. The Israelis want to be in a neighborhood where they're surrounded by Middle East countries which are fighting internally, which are torn apart internally. Your Lebanons, your Syrias, your Iraqs. That's what they want, because they then get to be the top dog in the region.
There is much of what you're saying, surely the American public out there knows. The changing of the goalposts, the fact that American soldiers have lost their lives, the fact that there have been warnings, including in that NYT article from Trump's military advisor, who made it clear that there could be several casualties. All of this is known to the American people, to Congress. Why is there not a greater pushback? Why is there seemingly not a greater pushback when there is this brazen violation seemingly of international law taking place, or, as I said, the constant changing of goalposts that could involve the loss of lives?
Well, it's not just international law that's being violated, it's the US Constitution. The US Constitution demands that Congress vote on war. Congress authorizes war. A president cannot take America into war without congressional authorization. There is an exception under what's called the War Powers Act that allows the president to use force for 60 days without getting congressional approval if there's an imminent threat to the US. And the intelligence community has made it clear that there was no imminent threat to the US from Iran. Iran was not about to attack America. No one truly believes that. The public are against this war. What's so fascinating, Rajdeep, is that prior to this war, only 1 in 4 Americans supported hitting Iran. Only 1 in 4 Americans. Now, normally when America goes to war, the minute the bombs drop, the minute American soldiers are in harm's way, the American public becomes very hawkish, immediately falls into line behind whatever foreign misadventure Bush or Obama or whoever it is takes them on. In this case, Rajiv, for the first time in my lifetime, in living memory, the American public has not switched. In the polls that have been taken since Saturday, the majority are still against this war. So he's ignoring public opinion. Trump told the New York Post on Monday, I don't care about the polls. He's ignoring public opinion, but there are midterm elections coming up in November. They were already on course to lose those elections, the Republicans. This will only cement that. And by the way, Democrats finally are speaking up. We're seeing for the first time even feckless, spineless Democrats, even those who are in the pro-Israel camp, are coming out and saying, you know what, we should not be fighting this war. This is an illegal war. This is something that's unconstitutional. Gavin Newsom, governor of California, very moderate mainstream Democrat, very pro-Israel guy, he came out yesterday and said, why did we kill 160 schoolgirls for Israel and Netanyahu's sake? And I think those questions are going to keep getting asked.
If those questions are going to get asked, what happens next? What's your sense? With Donald Trump, we never know what happens next. Do you believe that he will call a halt, early halt to the war and claim victory? Or as he said yesterday, this could go on for weeks. Do you believe this has become an ego thing about it? There are lots of conspiracy theories also that about backroom deals that have been struck. What's your sense? I know it's tough to predict what an unpredictable Trump will do, but what would you hazard? What happens next, given, as you're saying, that there is slowly a pushback even in America?
Anyone who makes predictions in Trump's Washington, D.C. is crazy, because this is a man who doesn't even know what he's going to do any day he wakes up in the morning. As you say, Donald Trump could either end this war today and declare victory, mission accomplished style like George W. Bush, or it could drag on for weeks. I suspect I would lean more towards some kind of fake declaration of victory, because one thing we know about Trump, Rajiv, he's not anti-war. This was a myth that Trump would be an anti-war candidate. He likes bombing countries. He bombed 7 countries in 2025, his first year in office. He launched more strikes than Joe Biden launched over 4 years in his first year. He likes bombing countries. What he doesn't like is prolonged conflicts, the quagmire of Iraq. What he always claimed to oppose was a long occupation of Iraq, of Afghanistan. He doesn't want to get stuck in Iran, even though they're talking about ground troops now. He likes the Venezuela-type conflict. You go in the middle of the night, bang, 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 made for television. You pull Maduro out with a bag over his head, and you go, ha-ha, look at that. That was amazing. It's like a Hollywood action movie. That's what this guy likes. He's a former reality TV star. This is what he enjoys. He's not some strategist, some geopolitical forecaster. This is something he got pushed into. This is something he doesn't actually care about deep down. He's now committed. He's got a massive ego, probably bigger than any person has ever had in the White House. So he can't, of course, look like he's been defeated. But at some point, he will be defeated, either politically or maybe even militarily.
In a sense, therefore, as a final question, if you and I were to talk a month from now, do you believe that the war would still be on? Neither of us are military experts in that sense. We don't know what the capacity of Iran is to hold out. Iran is obviously trying to expand the theater of war to bring in other Gulf nations. As you mentioned, those Gulf nations also stand presumably cruelly exposed today. In a sense, their defenses have also got exposed. So a month from now, do you believe we will still be at war?
So not just Gulf nations, Rashid. There's reporting that South Korea is losing some of its American munitions and protection. It's being diverted to the Gulf. Gulf countries are seeing that America only cares about Israel. Its other allies ultimately will always be sacrificed at the altar of Israel. That's become very clear. Will it continue a month from now? I think, look, first of all, let's not underestimate the Iranian regime's tolerance of attack and bloodshed. This is a country that took 10 years of beating by Saddam Hussein, backed by the United States and France and other countries at the time. They lost 1 million people, including many to chemical attacks, from Saddam Hussein's army. This is a country whose religious leadership, as Marco Rubio pointed out, is a Shia clerical leadership which venerates martyrdom. which, you know, sees martyrdom as the ultimate goal. Khamenei became a martyr. They made Khamenei a martyr. They gave him what he wanted. So I think they have quite a long tolerance, actually, for enduring bombs and bullets and attacks from America and Israel, especially if they carry on hitting back as they are now. Whether that lasts a month, 6 months, a year, let me just say this, Rashdeep. One thing I've learned, unfortunately, from my 46 years on this planet, watching wars like Iraq and Afghanistan, is there's a long tail to this stuff. You don't know when it's over. The West doesn't get to decide when wars are over. George Bush stood on an aircraft carrier and said, mission accomplished in May of 2003, a couple of months after toppling Saddam. We know what happened in Iraq for that decade and a half later. We know what happened in Afghanistan. 20 years later, the Taliban was back in office. Some of our opponents, especially in the Middle East, they think in terms of decades. Unfortunately, the US political media class thinks in terms of weeks, and that is the real disconnect.
Let's therefore leave it at that, Mehdi. Maybe we'll get back to you not after a decade, but maybe after a month or so, and get a sense of what impact this war has had, because clearly it's destabilized large parts of the world like never before. And I think you've given us a sense of what Donald Trump is about. I just wonder how you get away with saying some of the things you do in a Trumpian world. But I guess more power to you. You must get under his skin.
Well, some might say a lot about the Indian journalists who get under Narendra Modi's skin. We're living in a world where democratic journalists in democracies like India and America have to keep speaking out to value the importance of free speech, especially at a time of war when dissent is so important.
Let me leave it at that. I appreciate you joining me, Mehdi. Thanks so much for joining me here on the news today.